I'm going to go over how to build a profit pipeline, right? And this is the exact thing that has allowed me to do 11K days, whilst a recent example being at a Bulgarian fight camp and working for about 45 minutes in the day, right? Like this is me here, and this is not Bulgarian, Romanian fight camp. This isn't about having a crazy amount of followers, likes or views. What this is about turning that attention that you do get into as much profit as possible. And the reason why I say profit is we're talking profit, we're not talking revenue. Loads of people talk revenue. But the thing is I want to show you how to create as much profit as you can. Because if you constantly just focus on revenue, often you'll find that that will actually slip into very little profit into your pocket, right? So an example of this is kind of like the Rihanna effect, right? This is obviously based on revenue, but Drake and Rihanna both have the exact same amount of followers, really. Rihanna has 149 million, Drake has 141 million. If anything, I would say Drake right now is like higher in terms of like clout or however you'd say it. He is like more well known at the moment, more in the public face than Rihanna is, right? However, Rihanna's net worth is 1 billion and Drake's is 250 million, 75% lower net worth. And the reason that is Drake has loads of traction. He gets more views, he gets so much engagement, and he has a huge culture and fan base. However, Drake doesn't have that effective way of actually monetizing that, where Rihanna does. Rihanna has Fenty Beauty and Savage times Fenty, right? So Rihanna and Drake both have a similar amount of actual traffic. They both have a similar amount of engagement and clout, yet Drake hasn't actually utilized that in the same way that Rihanna has. So even though they're generating the same amount, Rihanna is getting a lot more from it. I mean, 75% lower is like a dramatic amount. So there's three really key parts of it. And I'm not going to go into depth of these, but just so you know, there's attention, which is obviously basically getting someone to concentrate on your stuff. That's actually what attention means. Having someone concentrate on your thing, right? Like you guys could be in the room, but if Mark had his headphones on, for example, and he was just only looking at his laptop with his headphones on, even though he's in the room, there's no attention there. Not just about having someone there or having someone on the app, it's about them actually paying attention to it, right? And then you get engagement, which is that person actually being involved and doing some sort of element of action, right? Like, comment, whatever. In this room, it'd be you guys asking a question, you guys taking notes, yeah? The third thing you have is you have conversion. What are you coming up to me and saying, Ned, like I'd love to take you on a mad boat trip because you're such a G. Or like, Ned, I'd love to, such a random example, but Ned, I'd love to pay you more to do X, Y, Z, right? And that's what conversion is. Like, it's just the difference between the marketing and actually someone becoming a prospect. What it actually means is just someone taking a desired action that you had for them, right? And there's two ways most coaches fail. The first one is weak cash flow, and the second one is they mix up revenue and profit. And yes, if you're doing business coaching like I am, talking about your revenue is going to be better for marketing. But actually having a sustainable way to generate enough profit that you can actually scale is super important. And I'll go into why weak cash flow is kind of one of the key ways coaches fail. But if you think about this, like, what's the only reason someone keeps a job? For their own money, yeah? And what is it about a job that stops people from, like, out of that fear, from going from a job to owning their own business?
They don't have to think.
Yeah, they have to think, I guess. Yeah, stable income, security, right? And it's the same with the business. The reason why the job feels so stable is you get that 1, 2, 3, 4K coming in every single month. And the business is exactly the same as that. You need to have that level of security over time. In the early days, yeah, maybe not. But in the late days, you really want to have the focus on building that. Because if your cash flow is weak, how can you reinvest? How can you actually predict, like, for example, let's say you want to move countries. How can you move country if you don't know that next month you're going to have X amount? How can you retire your mum, for example, if that's one of the things you want to do? If you say to mum, quit your job, next month, hey mum, can you get your job back? Do you know what I mean? Because I haven't generated as much. So weak cash flow is so important. Like, strong cash flow is so important. And almost you're better off having a business that earns a little bit less but has strong cash flow than owning a business that has weak cash flow but earns a bit more, right? And that also depends on how you mix the profit, right? So weak cash flow. Why weak cash flow occurs is to fix weak cash flow, basically why it occurs is you don't have much data, you don't have good systems, and you have low LTV. So how to create good cash flow is you have strong data, you have bulletproof systems, and you have high LTV, right? An example of this is, let's say you have weak cash flow. How are you supposed to know, right, that you actually even have that weak cash flow if you don't have good data? Like, how are you even meant to understand where your cash flow is coming from, the sort of timings your cash flow is coming in, if you don't have any data on it? So you can't make, without even tracking data on what causes the cash flow, without any data, you don't even know if you have weak cash flow or not. You're just trying to guess whether you have weak cash flow. So strong data. What this looks like is stuff like setting systems and closing systems. So this is just a spreadsheet. This is keeping it as simple as it possibly can be. But if you don't know the amount of like DMs you're sending, the amount of follow-ups you're doing, the amount of like conversations and reply rates you're having, the amount of pitch calls, the amount of calls booked, then how are you supposed to know what's causing the weak cash flow, right? For here, for example, I know my percentage of bookings. I know how many people are pitching and how many people are going through, right? On this side, this is my closing tracking. I know how much you're doing in the month. I know what's coming through ads. I know what's coming through organic. I know what the close rate percentage is. And the reason why this is so important is, like, what's the best way to make a change?
Where you're going wrong.
Look at where you're going wrong. Exactly, yeah. Literally that. And the only way to know where you're generally going wrong when you have multiple things going on is by having data on each subject. So this one's for closing, this one's for the actual sales, and this one's for the setting. You might be like, oh, like the close rate's really good. Why are we not scaling? And then you look at the setting and the pitch and the booking rate is super low. And you're like, okay, but we got loads of leads and we're like booking loads of calls, but I feel like I'm closing well. And you check the close rate, you're closing well, but you're actually only collecting really small deposits. It's like, oh, okay, well, is your close rate well, or is there something wrong with the offer, or what's going on here? Because your close rate is good, your setting rate is good, you've got loads of lead flow, but then you figure out what's wrong, and then you see on the sheet that your average order value is super low. So you're like, oh, okay, how do I get my average order value up so that when I actually get a close, it actually has an impact? Do you see? Out of anyone, like, where do you feel like you could implement a bit more data into your business? Closing?
That'd be setting.
Setting? Yeah, in what way?
Just do that mission track, just the volume a little bit more, like, or especially when like breaking it down to, you know, how many you pitch calls to and how many, you know, how many bookings you got and things like that.
Yeah, for sure. And in the early days, it's going to take more time because I'm not doing this. I mean, I do this one for when I'm taking the calls, but I'm not necessarily doing this for my setter or my setters, right? But in the early days, like, it's going to give you, one, the fundamentals of doing it so then you can teach it, and two, it's going to give you an understanding of where you're going wrong. And I actually think it's more important, well, just as important in the early days to do it as it is in the later days. Because the thing is in the early days, you're developing your skill set. So if you don't know your setting, then you don't know if you're good at setting or not. So then it's hard to know whether that skill set is complete or that skill set isn't, right? And the only way you can teach other people is if you've done it yourself. So you do it yourself, you create SOPs around it, you use those SOPs, so you actually use those standard operating procedures for yourself, you check that they work like that, and then you go out and train someone else to do it based on that. And that's the only way you could do it. If you have someone in your account doing your DMs, or you have someone doing phone calls, if you've not done it, built a system around it, then how can you teach it to someone? Because it has to be repeatable for them. So you have to track your own stuff to see where you're at with things. I only got someone to do my dials, for example, when my dial percentage got really good, the show ups were really high. I created an SOP around it, and even after I had that standard operating procedure, I was doing the dials with him, like we were doing it, we were mixing between, and I was just checking that when I follow this procedure, it was the actual way that I was doing it myself. Because then if I'm teaching a procedure that was actually different to the way I was doing it, he's not going to get the same results. So these early day things are super important. Like, even if you're below 10K, right, you're below 5, you need to do this if you're going to want to get to 15, 20, 30, 50. Because then eventually this is what you're going to be teaching others. You need to hold yourself to that same standard. Does that make sense? But yeah, I agree with that. The second thing is systems. So it's important to know, like, these are just 2 random screenshots of like me building out different systems of how it's going to build stuff, right? This recent one here is from my Go High level, right? And it kind of shows how it works. So you can't quite see here, but this says new lead, no answer. And then basically the no answer goes into the no answer pipeline, and they go through the no answer pipeline all the way to day 5. And then on day 5, they either go to strategy session booked, like wrong lead, like basically an actual failed number, not a real number, or they go into like long-term nurture. And like I have a process of how someone comes into my system. All of you guys here, for example, Sam or Felix, that you guys all came through the dials, you would have been in this CRM. And now you're moved all the way down and you're in booked calls and you're in a closed call section, right? And I need to keep track of all of this at all times. The thing that we're adding more recently is a client section, so that we have like a client pipeline as well to see where that in terms of timing and everything like that. And this is super important. And even here, like a small, tiny thing, because we have a long-term nurture, and this is why systems are so important, we can hit people with emails and everything if they don't answer. So we don't have to hit them with any emails or spam them with anything if they're picking up the phone or if we're speaking to them, because then that just seems spammy at times. But as soon as we put them into long-term nurture because they've gone through the no answer 5 times, or we've spoken to them twice through the booked call section here, which you can't really see roughly, then, and they're not interested, we'll then put them into long-term nurture and they'll get all these emails and stuff to warm them up over a period of time, so we don't waste the lead. And then what we also have is like a wrong number section. And what this means is we can get rid of and delete all the wrong numbers so it doesn't affect our CRM. If someone doesn't pick up or the email is incorrect or something like that, they're completely DQ'd, which is disqualified. Then they go into that section to get deleted, so it doesn't affect our email list, doesn't affect our calling list, it doesn't affect our like you get email and calling reputation and all this stuff, and it doesn't affect that. And I know this is for like a leads pipeline, slightly different to what you guys are doing, but the same concepts apply from Instagram. For example, on Instagram, you get that tagging feature. I don't know if you guys have seen that. And you should be tagging your leads. If you booked a call with them, tag them as booked calls. Because then when you go back, you should be following up with all the people you booked calls with. And if they haven't closed, you should be following up with them all. If you might not be able to tag them with these exact ones. I can't remember the tags off by heart. But for example, let's say you send them the booking link or you like pitch a call, you can use the little dispatched tag. And then you know that you've pitched them. So then if that person hasn't booked in, you can then go back and pitch them again, but you already know you're that far down. And it will allow you to organize it so that when you're on your Instagram, if you're getting loads of leads like you are, Sam, you can literally just click dispatched, go through dispatched. Okay, today, 4 of them haven't actually replied to that dispatch. We've pitched them, but they haven't booked in. Let's get the convo going again so we can actually pitch them, because these people are already 75% net. So before I go to all the new leads, I want to focus on these 75% that are already super warm. But you can't do that until you've labeled them. It's hard to find them, right? So that's systems.
Would you say systems is very important?
Yeah.
Have you been a lot after somebody books in a call or after somebody doesn't book, or is it unsure?
Yeah, we get people through, like quite a lot. Yeah, I mean, we get rebookings all the time if we dial them. Like one big thing for us is also just like when you have the system, actually enforcing it. Because the easiest thing to do for yourselves and also your team is for my like Harry to then go and focus more on the actual new leads, the fresh stuff, the like sexy stuff basically in your system. And you just set like and enforce boundaries, because every time we go through the actual people that are booked and no-showed or no closes, we do get more bookings. And like often they're quite warm because they've already seen our stuff. Even if someone hasn't closed with you and it's been 3 months or something, or 2 months, most of the time when you call them back up, they've seen way more of your content. They've seen way more of their stuff. They've thought about that decision that they didn't take for a long period of time. So when they jump back on with you, they'll be really keen. You'll get ones that will not be keen at all. That it will be in 2 months and they'll be even more like, no, get away from it. And that's fine. Just put them in long-term nurture, or like put them into something for the future and just slowly warm them up. Give them time. Don't waste your time on that. But you need to make sure you're hitting people more than once. Like don't just try and pitch someone and then never pitch them again. Like imagine if real estate agents did that. They made no money, right? Like some of these deals, I saw one the other day and the guy who followed up with him for 10 years, sent him an email once a week for 10 years, got the guy to buy one property, he bought a property for a few million, and then that same guy bought like 20 properties from him. So it's one of his like biggest ones. And he just followed up with him. He met him in a cafe. Yeah. Really famous guy on Instagram. I'm forgetting his name, but he was talking about. It's insane. So the next thing that's super important to make sure that you have strong cash flow is your cost per acquired client, right? So your cost per acquisition is like, depends on the person. Like if you're running ads, it's gonna be different. But let's say it costs you £100 to get a client for £300. That's a 33% CAC, which is cost per acquisition. If you then actually have good LTV, so you have people that renew, they stay on, something happens in the process, right? If that then renews, upsells for an extra 300, so they just renew for the same amount, it is now cost you £100 to get a client for £600, and that's a 16.67% CAC, which is a really healthy amount. So sometimes too many people focus on making it as cheap as possible, making sure that their organic is super good, and they have no other way of getting clients other than just through the organic and as many methods that are cheap as possible. But actually, if you spend a bit more on getting a client, but then you make it so that your fulfillment is very good, you can actually make even like slightly more expensive acquisition methods profitable by having a really good lifetime value. Does that make sense? Yeah? Because it halves it, right? And if you have someone, for example, I've had fitness coaching clients stay with me for 2 years, like literally the ones that I got out on at the beginning, stayed with me all the way, the whole time. And like, even when they're in really good shape, just staying with me because they wanted to. At times I'd like them, but I'd be like, right, like, even with lifetime value considering, I'd still be like to them, like, you don't need the coaching anymore because at the end of the day, you're in good shape. And they'd still want to stay, right? JJ is a good example of that. He literally, the reason I say about JJ is because he came on when my business was like tiny, like hardly any things. And he stayed the whole time. And he actually not just renewed, but he upselled. Like, he wanted bigger packages and he would ask me for it. And it wasn't like he was some crazy CEO or baller. He was like a relatively normal guy, but he was just so bought into the community and the vision, and it changed so much about his life that he kept going. And that meant that the actual CAC for him probably would have been like a few percent, even though the original one would have been super high. So LTV, and the reason that I say that is just so that you have that as a reference. Because the reason why LTV is good for cash flow is it basically has this like looping thing. So you can either focus on getting new clients all the time, new clients, or you can have really good fulfillment that basically gets you the same thing as a new client. Because if your fulfillment's so good and someone renews or recurs or upsells, then that's the same thing as getting a new client. So the actual cash flow also comes from the fulfillment, not just getting new clients consistently. If you focus on having really good fulfillment, you can do this. But it's not just about focusing on really good fulfillment, it's about building out the fulfillment so you have like a renewal and referral process. Because you can't just expect people to renew. Like, a lot of people will do that, right? And if you have a really high renewal rate without you even having a proper process to get people to renew, then when you actually have a good process to get people to renew, you're gonna get a lot of people renew, right? And an example of a process, you could simply just do it as like, you can have a much more complex process, or you could literally just do it so when you get a client on, you have points in the timeline where you mention renewal, and then you have 2 points in the timeline towards the end where you actually do the renewal and you pitch the renewal. It might be that, like, for example, 2 weeks in, you pitch referral, right? So you pitch them getting a referral. And then it goes on into 6 weeks, you pitch second referral, right? And then it goes to 8 weeks, you mention renewal very casually, super casually on the call. And by the way you mention renewal isn't like, we're gonna renew, it's like, oh, at week 6, month 6 or month 3, what we're gonna do is we're gonna switch into this to move forward. And it's like, you're not mentioning the renewal exactly, you're not mentioning the subscription, you're just mentioning that they're not gonna stay, they're staying for more than 3 months. You're like already programming it into their head that they're staying for more than 3 months, right? And then basically, what then happens is that you can then basically get to the end point. So you, for example, 4 weeks before, so the month before they finish, you can pitch renewal 1, and then 2 weeks before they finish, you pitch renewal 2, right? And how aggressively you want to do this depends on how confident you are in your fulfillment. For example, like, I did that a lot less with you guys in the earlier days because it was newer, right? So I'm more focused on just seeing where you're at all the time to see like what's going on. You're not going to be confident to pitch renewal if you're not really confident in what you're doing. But as you guys get more confident in what you're doing, you should be more focused on renewals. You should be really focused on renewals because you just want to keep helping the people that you're already helping. And it's the same thing with like the actual sales. The more confident you are in your fulfillment, the easier the sales would be as well. But having a process for this is super important because, like, for example, another one for you, Sam, is like, you show me loads of results, you get insane results, you get loads of renewals, but like, how many more renewals would you get if you actually had a process of a timeline of you like slowly mentioning it in? Because what you don't want to feel like is, you might think, oh, that's a bit manipulative, like Ned, but who wants to just get smacked in the face at the end of their transformation when they're all happy, we're being like, renew, like we're going here. You don't want that. You don't want that for the client. It's not nice for them going into it. It's a bit like going into a cutting phase. Like you let them know a little bit that they're gonna go into a cutting phase. You don't just hop on a loom and say like, we're cutting from today. And now you're eating less food, motherfucker. Like, it's just like, what? So you need to like let them know, just like you would with training, about the renewal, because it makes it more comfortable for them. But this is super important. Like, this is such an essential part that I see a lot of coaches missing out on. And it relates to every single business. LTV and new clients consistently is better for cash flow. And that's why, like, at times, like 6-month plans, 3-month plans can be better, because then you can have people consistently coming in. 12-month is also good, but you just have to make sure you plan your finances a lot. So the LTV pyramid, if you want to do an actual upsell, is slightly harder for fitness coaching depending on how you actually structure it. But the way that I structure it is, if you have a low ticket offer as well as a mid ticket offer, what might happen is this could be your low ticket offer, this could be your mid ticket offer, right? Even though that says upsell one. So you might get some people on this one, you might get some people on that one. The people that come on your low ticket, over time you want to get to your mid ticket. And the people that join on your mid ticket, over time you want to get to your high ticket. And that might be someone, for example, really basic example, someone coming in, or let's say from the top, someone joins your low ticket, which is they get a plan, they get the nutrition, they get like maybe 2 calls with you over 3 months, and they just get like they get added to a community, so they have an element of accountability, right? After a while, they start to gain size. And after like 2 months in, they're like, even though they've got a month left, they're like, oh man, I just got a new job, this and that. Like, I really want to like take this to the next level. So they then start working with you. You send them a Loom video once a week. You give them like more checkpoints. You do a check-in through WhatsApp. You have more elements of accountability. You have, I don't know, extra things. Maybe you send them a supplement pack to the house when they join on. And then they start to get in really good shape. And they're like, I'm thinking about doing a competition. All right, so okay, I can help you do a competition. We've got you here. Okay, but to do a competition, I've got to be on a one-to-one call with you twice a week. I've got to send you Loom videos once a week. I've got to check in with you this, and that. Like, I'm gonna have to be on it with your supplements, on it with your nutrition. So you can then, if you want to do that, you can then join this one, right? And the person starts all the way from here and goes down right to the bottom. And as they go down, they get more value for themselves and you make more money, basically. And this is really important to have. I would say if you're in the early stages, just focus on your middle one. And then after you've done your middle one, focus on your lower ticket and then build your highest ticket up at the end. So yeah, and not only like the thing that I really like about high LTV is it produces the best results, right? You can really get good results if you're able to work with someone for longer, if you're able to put more time into someone. So the thing that I love about upsells is that you normally, with an upsell, are gonna do more for them. And if you're doing more for them, they're gonna get better results. So this gives you better results, better testimonials, better transformations. And then it increases revenue without increasing the cost of acquisition, so more profit. But what the biggest thing I like about upsells is this side, because this then results in more of the clients you currently have being confident in your coaching, because they're seeing more people win in the coaching. And it also means that more the people online that see your stuff are going to be more confident in it because you get better results, right? Who in here feels like they're doing their like renewal or upsell or just like LTV process the way that they want to? And who in here feels like they can improve it? Put your hand up for improve. 1, 2, 3. Nice. Okay. Hi, in what way do you feel like you can improve it?
True, like there's more into it rather than just, again, like you said, falling and a few days of pull that thing ends and go past.
Yeah.
Because again, like you put these.
Yeah, you don't want to do it, right? Just the easiest thing I would do for that then, instead of creating a crazy process, is just have it where at week 6, let's say you do a 3-month program, week 6 you mention renewal. So you mention something about program past the point that they're actually on for, right? And then at week, like 4 weeks out, you mention actually about renewal. Like, you don't necessarily pitch price or anything like that, but you just mention the actual renewal itself. Like, oh, at the end of this, like in the next few weeks, we can actually talk about like what we're gonna do over the next 3 months to do X, Y, Z. And then 2 weeks out, you pitch it and you close it. Never do it on the last day. Do it 2 weeks out. And then what happens is they pay you the 2 weeks out, well, they invest the 2 weeks out, and then it starts obviously at the end of the 2 weeks. Because if you do it right at the last day, if something goes wrong, there's no reason for them to speak to you. So you've lost them. And like, you have to support people, especially with fitness coaching. because the only reason they're not in shape is because it's like they're not even doing what I would class as the basics of like living as a person, like actually being active, keeping yourself in good shape and like being in good condition. So that means that they're gonna need more support in this sort of area. So then that means basically like you going, like I said, like 6 weeks before, you going like, oh, we're gonna start leaning into a cut here, right? And then 4 weeks before saying like, okay, we're gonna like start reducing the calories now. And then 2 weeks before being like, okay, like we're gonna go into the proper shredding phase, if you wanna put it in gym terms. It's just much more relaxing for them as well. So the next stage, is that all clear? Yeah? The next stage is revenue. Why have I put that twice? Right, it's the same thing anyway. The next stage is revenue doesn't equal profit. And an example of this is like, let's say business one earns 15K in revenue, right? And that sounds nice, yeah? And they have a setter at 20%, they have a head coach at 20%. You wouldn't need this for 15K. You could do 15K all on your own if you really wanted to, depending on how it's built. But let's say you did have this because you didn't want to be working all the time and maybe you weren't charging super high ticket. So you had to have like more people on because of the fact that you have more clients. And then you have the head coach at a base of 1K because most head coaches are going to want some sort of base. You have a content guy at 1.5K. You have processing fees at 6%, depending. They'll go anywhere between 3 and 8, depending if you're using Klarna and different processing places. You have software, and then you have random costs, right? So your total expenses are 10,150. So it means you make 4.8K roughly profit. On this one, the only difference is a 10% lower in the setter, and then, it's calculated wrong, but then a 10% lower in the, like if you look up here, the coach here was making 4K, and the coach here is making 2K. Instead of the 20% base, they've now got a 2K. Instead of a 20% setting thing, they now have a 2K base. Might be that my calculation's slightly wrong here, which will ruin the whole point. But that's, let's say, a 20% less in fees. So this one has 20% less in fees, not more in fees. And then for example, it has 4% processing fees. So even looking for processes that have a little bit less. And what this resolves into, what this actually equals, is 8.6K profit, right? So even though it's a small difference, it has a 43% decrease in profit on the other one, even though they're small differences. And a really easy thing to think about is like revenue equals profit. You spend £50 on this, and then it takes out £50 of your profit. But that's not how it works. Like it seems like that's how it works, and that would make the most logical sense of how it works. But if you have small increases in your the percentage you give away, or like the cost of things, it can have a huge biting effect on the profit. Right? Like you might think like, oh, I'll give 5% of revenue here to this person. But that 5% of revenue might equal this much in profit because you already have this many fixed costs. And this is a really important thing to realize with scale. Because if you already have 5K in fixed costs and you're earning 10K a month, 5% of revenue is not equal to 5% of profit because you've already spent 5K on all the fixed costs you have. So you're now taking 5% of 15K and minusing it from 10K. So it becomes a much larger percent of profit. Does that make sense? And this is really, really important because I see coaches just get destroyed by this at scale. Like coaches are on like 100K a month and it's been eaten away at profit. Like I see coaches that coach fitness coaches in the industry and they're like saying these crazy numbers, but they're spending so much now, so much on team that their profit is just disgusting. Like I'm able to host a mastermind like this because I actually have stuff set up relatively well. And that's why they're all charging for their masterminds and they're not able to do them for free, right? So you just want to be really careful on this. And for a lot of you, this won't, can you go behind, yeah? For a lot of you, this won't relate yet, but it will start to relate as you scale more and more. Like for Sam, it's going to start relating to you more and more. And the way that you set stuff up now will depend on whether you have to completely restructure stuff in like 2, 3, 6 months time, or whether you'll be able to just keep pushing stuff. And the way that I like to think about it is, except in the early days when you're just hustling, and that is kind of the way you have to start. If you're not doing things at scale, then you shouldn't be doing them. If you're doing an action and you're like, this does not scale, don't do that action. If you're past the 5, 10K months, right? Every single action you need to do needs to have some element of scale. Yes, you might have some things within the month that have like a little bit of a hustle feeling and you're like getting clients on, but there still needs to be a baseline of things that scale. I learned this from 2 guys a year ago that were doing way over $1 million a year with their business, and they literally just said to us, we never do anything that doesn't scale. Everything that we do scales. You might remember them, Emmy and Tom.
Yeah, but I had a question is also like, if I do follow-ups over just WhatsApp, and let's say I'm PR by mail, I feel like that's a hard activity and not scalable because I'm sitting like 4 hours lead time. How would you rate that?
Scalable. You could get a new, like, because Sam has this, right? What you could do is get a new number for WhatsApp so that you can have a second phone so it's not on your personal WhatsApp. You can then add people to that WhatsApp, and then you can label people in WhatsApp. Like, you could say like business people, I have it labeled in WhatsApp, but you could label it separately, like follow up this, and that. And then it means that you could have someone on your WhatsApp, click follow up, go through and send messages to everyone. So it is scalable as long as you keep track of them.
I put everything in my arm, so once I get home, all the follow-up.
The reason why that's not scalable though is you can't track between the difference between the booked calls as easily to the no-shows, to the follow-ups. Like, you don't know who showed up, and you definitely need a separate WhatsApp because you can't add like setters in the long term. You can add quite a few people to your WhatsApp, but you can't add setters in if they can read the messages that your mum sent. But that's an easy change.
Say my setup could even
As- Yeah, as long as you train them. No one's ever heard, like Sam didn't know of Harry, for example, neither did Felix, like neither did loads of you that came on through Harry. But like, as long as they hold the right frame, it's fine. So that works, but you need to teach them, you need to do the dials first, loads yourself.
Yeah.
And you need to do it for every part of the process. So like, you have the new lead, for example, there's a dial way to do that. You have the no-show, you need to dial them in a certain way. You have the follow-up, you need to dial them in a certain way. You have the callback, you need to dial them in a certain way. You have to do every single part and teach that. Yeah, the season. Yeah, the WhatsApp one can really work. So yeah, basically, profit is forced, it's not natural. It's a really important thing to think about. And like, it's really easy, and I've done it, to like feel like profit is natural. Like, feel like profit just comes with scale, but it doesn't. Sometimes profit can lower with scale. So you have to force profit. Alex Hormozi talks about this all the time. And I used to listen to Alex Hormozi on this, and I used to like actually take in a lot of his stuff. I think some of his stuff is right, some of it isn't. And I used to think like, yeah, but that's not true. Like, the more money I've earned, the more money I've had, right? And then the thing is I then started running ads and stuff on top of that to scale. And I realized, fuck, profit is forced. Like, when you actually put yourself in a position where this is genuinely scalable and it's not dependent on, or even like, I started running good content systems where I had an editor and everything, and I could actually maintain it. I realized that profit was forced. Because in the early days, I could take on as many clients. I could run loads on organic, and I built everything on organic. But at some point, I'm gonna have too many clients for me to coach on my own. At some point, it's gonna be too much for me to do the editing. At some point, I'm gonna wanna take a week off to actually just go and enjoy my life. And that's when I start to be like, profit is forced. I can't just keep taking more people on my own. I can't just keep creating all this content on my own. I can't just keep doing everything on my own. And when you start having to add these small things into your business, like team members, editors, maybe head coaches, to make your life more enjoyable. So like we went over in the mindset module, in the mindset one, meaning that you actually hit every single area of life. You're not just earning more money, but you live a life that you love. You can spend time with the people you love, and you can actually do the things you love. That's when you're gonna start realizing that profit is forced. Because in the early days, you can just kind of give profit away anywhere because it's so high profit margins naturally. But then as you scale and as you wanna get people on, if you wanna go far in here, and everyone here has come out here for a reason, they all wanna go super far, you're gonna realize that you need to force the profit a bit. Okay, so 5 steps for the next 30 days. The first thing is build your funnel. Get clear on your process from lead to fulfillment. If you're earlier days, this is less important, but I would still build it out to understand it. Actually get clear on how you get your lead, and just like write it out and like put this, you can use Miro, for example, how you actually get your lead, how you actually get your views, where that comes from, and then what happens all the way to fulfillment in terms of, and then what happens for renewal. So all the way from getting the lead to fulfillment to renewing the person. And the reason why you want to do this, even if you have an insane funnel, is you want to know, because if anything ever goes wrong in the funnel, you want to be able to find where that is straight away. You want to understand the process that you have so you can understand like where you need to fix, right? And that goes into the second one. Track your data. And then after you track your data, you can see where the weakest element of your funnel is. Is it the views? Is it the engagement? Is it the conversion? Is it the fulfillment? Is anyone renewing? Or is anyone saying this is shit? Are you getting results? Are you getting any views if you're doing it organically? If you're doing ads, which none of you are, like what's going on with the ads? Are the ads converting? What's your conversion? What's your engagement? Are people coming to your calls, having consumed enough of your content and actually want to join you? Are you closing people on enough money, basically? Or are they not engaging in any of your long form content? So actually they're not really that bought into you and they're only willing to pay £300, £400, £500, right? This is super important stuff to know, and this comes from tracking your data. And then the next thing is focus on that individual element. Build that part that is the weakest in your system so strong that it starts to break the other parts. And when you build that so strong that it starts to break the other parts, then what will happen is this will no longer be the issue. So whatever your weakest thing is, let's say you don't get enough like engagement, or you don't get enough people come to you. You can either massively focus on your organic socials, or you could just start getting insane ads if you have enough capital and you're already big enough behind you. But you want to focus on whatever that weakest part is for a period of time. Through having your, good question though, through having your funnel, right? So like knowing from A to B where it is that you get people through. So let's say you know that you get someone from Instagram here, they watch these type of videos that they come in top of funnel, they then start getting better, they start going through the funnel through engagement with these sort of videos. They then watch a YouTube video, normally here, not all of them, but this is what happens. We then reach out to them, this and that. And then because you have all this data, like you know, all the cold outreaches you're doing, all the warm outreaches you're doing, the no closes that you're having, like the closes you're having, like the no shows, you can then look at where the weakest part is. Like let's say you're getting loads of leads in, but your close rate's 10%, get really good at closing, right? Let's say you're getting loads of leads in, but your booking rate's like 2%, get really good in the DMs. Let's say you're getting no leads, get really good at lead generation and really focus on that for a short period of time. Get like fucking insane at it and just like really figure out and go aggressive on it. Let's say you have loads of clients in your first month, but then it gets towards the end, the third month, and you notice no one's renewing. You've got an issue with fulfillment. Send out a survey to each of your clients to ask them what's gone well with the coaching, or even send them WhatsApp messages and understand what they've enjoyed, what they haven't enjoyed, what needs improving, what is already good, this and that, and understand where in your fulfillment you can improve and where it's already going really well, right? Sick question though. And then focus on building that part and then systemize that element. Once you have that at its peak, once you have it at the level you want, then systemize it. So build frameworks, standard operating procedures, shortcuts, or even hire someone to run that section, right? For example, you said, like you got the DMs a lot better, they're really good, still improvement to be made, but they were good, and then now you hired someone to sort it out. So it starts to systemize it. The next stage is for you is to make sure that you have the right SOPs and frameworks in place so that can maintain the level and not dip and go up and down, right? It can be constant. And this is to reduce the time/input required to maintain that high functionality. That's the whole point. Once you have that thing at the level you want to start to systemize it so that the time and input from your end goes lower for you to still maintain the same level of functionality. And that's super important, because if it's not systemized, you can't scale. Because if you're constantly having to put all this effort in, put all this energy in to maintain that thing that you've built really well to the same level, then you can never move on to the other things which are going to then be weaker because you've focused on this. So you need to, before you move on, before you get too excited to move on to the next thing, you need to systemize it, because then you can move on to the next thing clearly. You can move on to the next thing knowing that this thing is going to maintain the level of integrity that it has, right? And this is super important, because if you don't do this, then you end up moving on to the next thing and then this thing goes lower. And you might as well systemize it when it's at its peak. You might as well systemize it when it's doing really well, right? And then key note, if it can't be systemized or delegated, it's not long term. So know that it's not long term. It might still be an important activity. It might still be essential for the time period, because at times you have to generate cash flow. You have to get clients on by any means necessary. I did that in the early stages. I got people from literally anywhere. I used to door knock to sell fitness coaching, like literally knock on doors to sell fitness coaching. But you need to realize if it can't be systemized or delegated, it's not long term. Some things can be slightly more systemized than others. Your check-ins, if you're doing one-to-one coaching, you're not going to be able to fully systemize them. But are you going to be able to systemize them a bit and delegate them a bit? Yes, because you could have an assistant coach and you could be in a group chat with both those coaches, and then they could offer 2 levels of support. So if you can't always be there for support, the client can still get the same level of support because they've got 2 touch points, right? So then that's systemized. It's a bit like, if you think about it this way, actors, they earn a lot of money, But the reason why they're not necessarily business owners until they actually create a business, even though they earn a lot of money, is because their time is still dictated. The amount they earn is still dictated by their time. They don't earn money unless they're acting, right? So they still have that like correlation between their time and money. And what you're trying to do with systemizing is you should get to the point over time where you can earn money without doing so. Like you can be asleep and earn money, or you can spend a small amount of time and earn 10 times more than you did in that same period of time, right? Like for me now, at the boxing camp is the most recent one. I think I did overall at that boxing camp, maybe 15, 20K, I can't remember exactly, and that's US as well. But I literally worked hardly, like Julius was there, we literally didn't work. We literally did no work, right? And I'm still able to generate, I'm still able to move forward with that. Because yes, I was taking some calls, but when I was hopping on a call, I had processes and systems to make sure that they were nurtured, they were coming in well, they were getting booked for me. I wasn't having to book them on my calendar. I had people editing my videos, so I didn't have to edit my videos. So I could be at the shisha bar, get back from the shisha bar and close a deal and then like basically earn the amount that I earn in that time, right? So the fifth thing is just repeat it within the next weakest chain. And that's how you scale and secure. And that's basically where you just fix the bottlenecks and keep doubling down. And when you do this, you just do this with every single element, and then eventually the business will just keep moving forward. At times, you're still gonna have to do stuff to maintain. It's like when you're focusing on one element, don't just be like, oh, okay, I'm not gonna do any fulfillment now. Obviously, you still gotta do fulfillment, but if your fulfillment's strong, don't focus on improving that when you've got another element that's weak. Or if your lead generation's really strong, but your fulfillment's weak, keep doing the lead generation that you're doing, but focus on improving that fulfillment, and then whilst maintaining the other stuff, and then move off. So yeah, thanks for watching, G's. Any questions? What questions do you have?
What are some good examples of things that you can't really system?
Yeah, this is a good question. Any context on the question or just in general? Okay, so I would say like things that you can't systemize, for example, is, I mean, you could systemize most things. It just depends how you're going about it and how you're building it, right? Like, for example, something that you can't systemize, let me think. It's more like about the way that you have it currently set up. So, you know, if you have it set up in one way, you need to change it to make it systemized. Julius' example is perfect. If you're keeping everything in your WhatsApp with your family and everything like that, like that's not going to be systemizable long term. You're going to have to make changes to that to then make it systemizable. And the quicker you do that, the better. It's easy for us to delay that stuff because I do it as well, because you have other more priority things, but you have to see how important it is. Right? If it's not that important, don't focus on that. But at the end of the day, if you're building it on your family WhatsApp, when you go to the new WhatsApp, you're gonna have a whole new list of numbers, and you're not gonna have all those numbers you built up on the old WhatsApp. So then all that thing you built up on your old WhatsApp, you're gonna have to try and transfer. So in terms of you like actually getting to a point where you can systemize, you're better off getting on the new WhatsApp as quickly as possible, getting the team on there as quickly as possible, labeling as quickly as possible, and then now you know you're for sure in a position where that can scale, that can be systemized, right? It's even like if you're door knocking, if you're just randomly door knocking, that can't be systemized. But if you start testing new things with the door knocking, tracking it, and figuring out what intro works the best, what way of approaching works the best, what pitch works the best, and writing SOPs on that, that then starts to become something you can systemize, right? And then that means you can teach other people it. You could get 10 door knockers, 20 door knockers, right? And stuff that you really can't systemize, you'll feel. You'll feel like, okay, right, this is so unsystemizable. Like, what you can do to check if something's systemizable is you can think, could I teach someone this? Or if it's no, like, oh, could I implement like an automation or like something to make this easier for me? Or am I just gonna have to put more and more and more into this for me to earn more and more money? If that's the case, then it's not really systemizable. Any other questions? Good question, man. Come on, there must be a question. Sweet. Yeah? No questions? All right. Sweet, man.